As promised, joining me right now is senior NBA writer for ESPN. He's the host of the Brian Windhorst and the Hoop Collective podcast. But more importantly, he's a friend, one of the best in the business. The one and only Brian Windhorst joins me right now. Wendy, what's going on, man? Have you recovered from the shock you felt Saturday night when this news came down that Luca Doncic was being traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis?
Nope. And I suspect, actually, I'll ask you, did you have any inkling this was coming at all?
Zero.
Okay.
Zero. I had no idea.
Most of the time in our business, when there's a significant deal, even if it's an insignificant deal, we have heard something about it. We can't always talk about it because, sometimes we got to protect people. Sometimes we don't see all the sides of it and what have you. But normally we are at least a little bit aware in our business of certain things coming down. There was nothing on this. Zero, nothing. And then based on the way my phone lit up, Stephen A., head coaches, players, executives, agents, players' lawyers, the workout guys, the reaction that I got from all the phases of the NBA is the shock. I've never seen anything like it. I do think it's truly, not only is it the fact that it's a star for a star in the middle of the season, which is extraordinarily rare, but it was a star for a star where nobody in the whole NBA universe saw it coming, which makes it a one-off that I've ever seen.
It's obvious why the Los Angeles Lakers would do this deal despite the greatness of Anthony Davis. Luka is a once-in-a-generation talent. He's box office. He's got international, you could say international appeal. That doesn't even begin to measure his cachet. And we know what the Laker brand is all about. This is what they do. They put forth succession plans, from the days of whether it's Wilt, it's Kareem, it's Gasol, it's Shaq. The list just goes on and on. Jerry West, draft day swap for Kobe Bryant. It never stops. We understand the Lakers. What possible explanation do you have for the Dallas Mavericks electing to do this, Wendy?
I think it's a basic one. They knew that coming on July 1st, or I guess June 30th, they had to give him a 5-year, $200 or $350 million deal or not. If they didn't give it to him, all hell was going to break loose. If they did give it to him, they had to believe in him for the next 5 years at that price. And they didn't believe in it. And that decision is the core of all of this. As far as I know, now maybe there'll be new information that'll come out, but as far as I know, they basically decided they didn't want to give him that deal. And, there are certain situations where you would say, look, if you don't love a player, give him the contract at least, because then if you want to trade him, the player can't control where he goes. If a player has a year on his contract, which is what Luka would have, that he could control where he goes. So one school of thought would be, all right, you don't love him, give him the contract and figure it out later. But they not only made that decision, they made the decision that they wanted to do something now and to deal with it this season. I don't know, but I suspect the reason is because Kyrie Irving is in his, early to mid 30s. They don't want to do something that is going to detract from that. Not only that, Kyrie Irving can be a free agent this summer, and they wouldn't want to have to deal with both situations. So I do think the core of it was they didn't want to pay him the $350. They live in a world where they see Joel Embiid on this humongous contract that now is becoming a potential problem for the 76ers. They kind of wanted to avoid that. And they said they wanted to compete for a championship this year. And they went out there and they looked and they said the player that we can get that can make us win, have a chance to win this year is Anthony Davis. And those two realities, though, you can say that those are mistakes. You can say that it's a flaw in judgment, but those two realities led us to that result when that trade came down Saturday night.
The thing that's challenging for me as I sit here and continue to cover this story along with yourself and Shams Charania broke the story, so let's give him some love and props for that and what have you. The thing that really throws me aback is whether it's from other NBA executives, whether it's from Hollywood stars, the list goes on and on. They're like, wait a minute. The Knicks had to give away 5 first-round picks to get Mikal Bridges. They had to give away a couple of picks to get a Karl Anthony Towns. Assets had to be surrendered to get a Rudy Gobert. You look at some of these deals that have transpired. How in the hell can anybody justify the Dallas Mavericks telling us we're going to give away Luka? We know that Anthony Davis is all-world. He's 25-12 in his sleep. He's one of the best big men in the game. He's an elite defensive player. But still, not to having nearly the box office appeal or anything like that, nor is he the player that Luca Doncic is. How do you justify getting or giving away Luca Doncic and only getting 1 first-round pick in return? How does Brian Windhorst explain that?
Yeah, so the Kevin Durant trade is a fascinating one because if you compare Durant and Anthony Davis, you look at what the Nets got. And I think right now it's up to 9 first-round picks, some pick swaps, because they obviously got, Mikal Bridges. They got draft picks and Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. They already swapped out Bridges, and they might even swap out Cam Johnson for another first-round pick or two. That could go to double digits in first-round picks. And frankly, if the Mavericks wanted to, they probably could have called Brooklyn and offered them Luka, and I think they could have gotten the lion's share of that stuff that's from that Durant trade. But I think the big difference here is the Mavericks wanted a player they could win with now. All of those picks look incredibly impressive on paper. None of them are helping them win this season. So I can get my mind, and as I've talked to executives in the league, Stephen A., it's helped me get my mind around, okay, they came to the decision that Luka isn't going to be their guy. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can understand it. They came to a decision that Anthony Davis was going to be their guy. Okay, you don't want to open it up to the whole market. I think that's possibly a mistake, but that's your decision. I can kind of get it. The one thing I haven't reconciled is not getting everything from the Lakers for this player. And I understand why the Lakers were negotiating. The Lakers are saying, hey, listen, Luka is going to be a free agent in a year and a half. We don't get the Supermax advantage. Luka was going to sign. I don't care what anybody says. Luka was going to sign that $350 million deal. That was not a stressor for the Mavericks. The stressor wasn't whether Luka would sign it. The stressor was whether the Mavs wanted to pay it. The Lakers don't have that advantage. They don't get the Supermax. What Luka can now sign with the Lakers is the same thing he can sign with anybody else. So the Lakers now have a year and a half, but they're going to try to get it done this summer. But they're on the clock a little bit to get Luka a team around him that he feels good about. And there's only so much you're going to be able to sell him on playing with 40-year-old LeBron. He's got to worry about the 5 years. So I can see why the Lakers would say, listen, we got to hold back a draft pick. We got to hold back Austin Reeves because we got to potentially still build this team around Luka in the next few months. I can understand the negotiating position. I can't understand why Dallas didn't get it anyway. And so that's the one thing I don't understand, why they left those things on the table. And God bless Rob Pelinka. You can say that this fell into their lap, and that's a fair assessment, but you can't say he didn't negotiate a good deal. Whatever he did to get the Mavericks to accept the terms, he did a great job making that negotiation.
With that being said, I don't recall anybody being more critical of Luka Doncic than you over the years in terms of his conditioning, particularly during the NBA playoffs, especially in the finals in a particular game against Boston. You went ballistic. You was as disgusted with him as I've ever seen you. When we hear that the Dallas Mavericks were fed up with Luka Doncic, put into perspective through your years of covering this league, the kind of stuff that they saw, the kind of stuff they believe he was doing, Brian Windhorst, that made them say, we've had enough. Get the hell up out of here. And we're going to send you to LA. And oh, by the way, we're going to cost you 9 figures, or about $125 million, because you're no longer eligible for the Supermax. You got to accept the max deal from the Los Angeles Lakers, which is at about $219 to $229, as opposed to the $345 that you were going to get from Dallas. What was he doing to make the Dallas Mavericks do this?
And don't forget, I know the taxes between Texas and California.
Yes.
That's not even computed.
Yes.
The reason I was so viscerally upset after Game 3 of the finals last year was because I had seen Luka. I wasn't about his conditioning. I don't know I'm not an expert in conditioning, clearly. But what I was upset about was that he allowed his demeanor and his focus on the game to hurt his team. And I had seen him do this several times before in big games for his national team. I cover international basketball. I have seen him do this several times while playing for the Slovenian national team. He was ejected or disqualified from a game, a vital game, an elimination game, when he completely started to hurt his team by the way his demeanor was in that game. And so I was viscerally upset that he did it again on this highest stage, because if you're down 2-0 and you lose game 3, you're eliminated. No one's ever come back from 3-0, and they weren't going to come back from 3-0. And the fact that he played so well with so much focus in game 4 only made it worse. And I was frustrated that the finals were going to be over, Stephen A, because I felt that he was the key to making the finals a long, great finals, and instead he was the key to making it a short finals. And that's why I was upset. And you know this better than anybody. When you say something about a player, when you are critical of a player or an organization, even if you're founded in your facts and your opinion is right, you will often have people defend that person or that team. Your phone blows up during commercial breaks on First Take, and for people who are giving you instantaneous defense. When that happened last year, and I said that about Luka, I was in Dallas, coming to the arena every day for days on end, and nobody from the Mavericks organization said anything to me, even if they thought I was right and what I was pointing out. Typically, you're used to getting them to defend their guy, because that's sometimes their job and their prerogative. Nobody said anything to me. And when that happened, I made a note of it in my head. I was like, because I prepared myself. I came into the building going, okay, here it comes. I'm going to get a procession, PR, someone from the front office, someone from the coaching staff, nothing. And it's because I think that on a personal level, they had been very frustrated with him too. And then they came into this season off that great season last year, tremendous momentum. He gets hurt in training camp, probably because he wasn't in the best shape. While he's hurt, he falls way out of shape. He comes back and is so out of shape that he has this hand or wrist injury, and they shut him down again. Yes, to help the injury, but also to get him back in physical condition. He comes back and then he gets injured again in the same injury. So I think his health was exacerbated in his conditioning this year, but I think there was the whole package that was detracting. And having said all that, I still think it's a controversial and questionable decision to pull the ripcord on a guy 25 years old. I don't think I could have done it.
What kind of effect do you think this move signals to players in the league and for the league overall? Owners, executives seem happy that the Dallas Mavericks sent this kind of message, that they were willing to send away their superstar, because it sends the message nobody is safe.
Yeah, maybe it is a tipping point. You eloquently talked about that on First Take today. I guess we've got to wait and see. If Mark Cuban was still the owner of the team, all of these things could have been true with Luka, and I don't think Mark Cuban does it, because I think he had a different view of it. And again, maybe Nico Harrison and Patrick Dumont, who's the governor of the team and signed off on this, maybe they'll regret it. But it is fascinating that they're saying that all of the things that Luka brings, teams either have generational superstars or they're trying to get them. That's it. Essentially, you can put teams into two different baskets. Everything else that they do, you either got a superstar or you don't, and you're dreaming of one. So to have one and to send them away because they didn't fit exactly what you wanted is a complete going against the grain of everything we've seen for the last era in the NBA. So maybe this blows up in the Mavericks' face. Maybe 2 years from now, we see the Lakers come into the same conclusions that the Mavericks have already come to, and the Mavericks will look good. I would still bet on Luca Doncic. I wouldn't put my life on it. I wouldn't put my house on it. I still believe that.
So would I.
I still believe that, and when I got frustrated at him last year and criticized him heavily, I still believe that it's part of his story arc. I still think someday he's holding the Larry O'Brien in one hand and the Bill Russell Trophy in the other and telling everybody to stick it. I proved you all wrong. And it would all have been part of his journey. I still think that day could be coming, but the Mavericks don't. And the Mavericks know more about Luka than anybody else in the NBA.
I want to look at some other moves from the weekend before I let you get on out of here. De'Aaron Fox is heading to San Antonio while Zach LaVine is heading to the Sacramento Kings. What do you make of that three-way deal that happened?
So the Spurs are extremely excited because they were able to acquire De'Aaron Fox without giving up any of their core pieces. I'm talking about a guy like Devin Vassell, a young guy like Stephon Castle, their first round draft pick from this past year. Even a guy like Keldon Johnson, who's a key player for them. They didn't have to give him up, and they gave up a multitude of first round picks, but not their best picks. They have the Atlanta Hawks unprotected pick this year. That could be a good pick. The Hawks right now are sliding. They didn't have to give that up, for example. So they're very excited about it. What I would say is they now have to give De'Aaron Fox a $50 million a year contract. And part of the reason why I think the Kings decided to trade him is they weren't necessarily sure he was a $50 million a year player. And so that is going to be an interesting thing. It's not as public and is not as much talent as Luka, but some of the Kings' decision here to trade him now, I think, was, they weren't sure they wanted to pay him that money. So we'll see how that works out for the Spurs. But he doesn't have to be their franchise player. Their franchise player wears number one. One of the interesting things about this to me is that the Kings get Zach LaVine and they pair him with DeMar DeRozan, a pairing that they're both I like them as people. I've gotten to know them a little bit. They're both extremely talented. They're both having good seasons, but their pairing together did not mean success in Chicago. And they got some extra first-round picks for it, but I don't see the Kings shouldn't fall off here. You trade one of your best players, typically it's a fall-off. The Kings should remain competitive. They can still make the playoffs, but it's curious that 2 years ago they were in the playoffs and they were on the right path, and they've ended up trading away their best player, arguably, him or Sabonis, and firing the coach that got them there. Mm-hmm. And then importing a duo from Chicago that very much didn't work in Chicago. So I'm not sure they're exactly headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I will say this to you, though. De'Aaron Fox may not be worth $50 million a year in Sacramento, because where were you going? But is he worth $50 million a year to be the point guard you're going to pair with Victor Wembanyama? I'd say yes. I have no problem with it whatsoever. Finally, what's up with Jimmy Butler, who reportedly told the Warriors he won't sign a long-term deal if Golden State were to trade for him? What's the deal with Jimmy Butler right now?
You've got to admire. You can say a lot of things about Jimmy Butler. You've got to admire how hard he is working to force his way to the Phoenix Suns. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. The Suns are trying to contort themselves in 100 different ways to pull off this almost impossible trade, get Bradley Beal to accept a trade and make that trade to a place that can deliver stuff that can get Jimmy Butler. It's so hard, but Jimmy is so focused on making it happen. He is telling other options that would be really good options. He could have gone to Memphis, said, no, I don't want to be there. That team could win a championship this year. I mean, I wouldn't favor it, but they could. He could have gone to Golden State and played with Steph. And he said, no, I'm not going to sign there. He is absolutely hell-bent on forcing his way to Phoenix. And Phoenix is still trying. They're still throwing out lines, trying Hail Marys. If that doesn't happen and we get to Thursday and the Phoenix option finally closes, then I think you could see reopening the situation with Golden State. But Jimmy Butler is determined to give that every single opportunity. And I have no idea whether it's going to work out, but it's amazing what and by the way, costing himself a lot of money to force his way out of Miami. His desire to get to Phoenix is incredible. You could debate whether his desire to be great for the Heat would not have been more productive, but he is certainly going this route.
They could come out of the West with Jimmy Butler, with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I don't have any doubt in my mind. They'd have a shot. They'd have a big-time shot. But I also know this. You talk about him getting less. He's making life difficult for Pat Riley, which brings me back to Pat Riley looking him in the face and telling him nearly 2 months ago, no, we're not trading you. He should have never said that in my estimation. Last but not least, what the hell is up with Bradley Beal, and why is he so hell-bent on staying in Phoenix if it's clear that they want him to waive his no-trade clause so they can move him out of there? Why would he want to stay someplace that doesn't particularly want him? What's wrong with him?
Well, that's their strategy, Stephen A. Their strategy is to make him so uncomfortable that he will waive it, and it's a heck of a strategy. I have heard many different machinations of what could happen with Bradley Beal, and most of them I reject. There are a couple of places I could see him being willing to go. The weird thing is one of them is Miami, and Miami doesn't want him. So this could have been a clean trade. His agent, Mark Bartelstein, who has been doing this job for over 30 years, is looked me in the face and said, Brad does not want to be traded. He's not going to waive it. That said, he is being offered around. So I am leaving all options open. I am not going to predict how that's going to go. I do think it's possible that Brad could be traded in a part of a Butler deal by Thursday, but my gosh, it is a complicated situation that's been hard to watch unfold.
The one and only Brian Windhorst. Appreciate you, buddy. You know we'll be talking
Thank
a
you.
lot over the next few days and weeks to come. No doubt about it. Take it easy. See you on NBA Today in a little bit. Thanks so much, buddy.
Have a great week in New Orleans, by the way.
All right, man. I'll try my best.